New Age India. It's a series of panel discussions that we've been running at the India Engagement Center at the World Economic Forum in Davos. I welcome you all on behalf of Edge Entrepreneurs, the PhD Chamber of Commerce and Industries, and of course, Invest India. Thank you so much for giving us the space to host a series of very insightful conversations on everything from what it means to be a global Indian, around entrepreneurship, sustainability, and where this decade leads for us as Indians. I would request people at the back to please keep it down a little bit if possible, so we can hear our panelists as we go around speaking to them. And yes, if you do not get a place at the back, we have a few seats up front waiting for you. So first up with us, we have Pawan Sukhdev. The way that we're going to structure the panel today is that we'll have a couple of opening remarks from everyone for a couple of minutes and get to know a little bit about them, and I come back to them with questions. But Pawan here, I have a very particular question for you. You have not only won the Tyler Prize, which claims to be the Nobel Prize of the environment, but you've won the two other prizes also, which claim to be the Nobel Prize for the environment. How does it feel like being on the receiving end of that, and also your choice of color for the jacket and the tie that you've chosen here, being from the space of being?
As someone in the sustainability space, this comes naturally to me. I don't have to think about it. It's there in my cupboard and I wear it. But yeah, the prizes is a funny story. So I'm sorry, with advance apologies to anyone from the United States or Sweden or Japan, because there are three claimants for the so-called Nobel Prize for the environment, but actually there isn't a formal Nobel Prize for the environment. The Tyler Prize being American, they loudly announce it as one does. Right? So, as this is the Nobel for the environment. The Japanese who give you the Blue Planet Prize will quietly mention it to you privately in a large gathering, with great respect, saying that, you might think that this could be the Nobel Prize for the environment. You might, not much. No, it's half. Yeah. So there's a difference. Yeah, that's right. So, and of course, the Swedes will say, oh, well, this was the first, it's been around for a long time, the Gothenburg Award. And of course, there are other claimants, they will tell you knowledgeably about the Nobel Prize, but honestly, this is quite the same.
The only undisputed fact is that you've won all three of them, so they can fight.
Yeah, so the controversy doesn't affect me. They can make up their minds. Anyway, but what were these for? So my work, I'm not the only physicist on this panel, so you'll have to tell them your story. But there are two physicists out here, both of whom have moved away from physics. I did astro and then switched for whatever reason. I guess pursuit of wealth was the obvious one as a young man, to finance and did banking and did my qualification and all that. And one of the things I couldn't understand in finance and the economics paper that I had to do for this is, what is this thing about externalities? Why do these guys have externalities? If it's in physics, if it's very big, it's astrophysics. If it's tiny, it's atomic. If it's smaller, it's nuclear, even tinier particle physics, quarks, gluons, and all. And so what's the need for externalities? And I kind of worried about it, but I got on with the business of doing markets and banking and so on. And it was only when my first daughter was born, Mahima, and she had this love for nature, and suddenly this whole externalities thing came back to my head. Because I was taking her out to, Borivali National Park and Kamala Nehru National Park in Bombay and so on, and entertaining her with zero cost. Right? And I was thinking, wow, the value is huge. The cost is zero. Fancy that. And of course, the flip side, the loss of India's forests bothered me because there was huge value being destroyed in the process of destroying forests and their beautiful functions of maintaining ecosystems and nutrients and fresh water for the fields of farmers and for us. And so there was this disconnect in my head, and I'm a markets person. I'm not beginning to understand, why don't these guys value these assets? Well, the answer came to me quite quickly when I started reading David Pearce and Partha Dasgupta and other economists. It's basically because these are public goods.
Partnerships can be global investors investing in young startups, using education as a part of the medium of that, because they were still in IIT Bombay when they founded this startup. And then partnerships can also be with global companies. For instance, we want to kind of look at how we can really scale up some of our other businesses in, let's say, financial services or the others. And there are enough and more businesses which are kind of on the fintech side globally, which have created a lot of value. We're doing partnerships with them. We've done something on the agri-financing side with Rabobank. So I guess for us, it's going back to the mantra, we want to scale
Excuse me.
5x.
Shh. Please, if you could maintain silence in the room. Really
So we want to
appreciate
scale up 5x, 10x because we believe India has that opportunity. We want to scale each of our businesses, and we know we can't do it on our own. So who is that best partner with us? And we will take them along.
Thank you so much for sharing that. And looking at the way that most modern day organizations are getting pegged, I think the way that you summed it up, it truly brings together your role as head of partnerships and alliances, right? Because normally you wouldn't think of a corporate startup engagement as a way of doing partnerships, but because you come from a background of M&A, you understand the value of investing in those people as well. It's almost like a venture lab. I didn't realize that Mahindra was had sort of like a venture builders lab built into it that was promoting the next stage of startups to come in and be part of a bigger story. In general, startups can be fast, but they don't have money, and the companies are large and they can leverage that.
So I'll give you an example. You mentioned venture labs. We actually have a division called Mahindra Partners, which was essentially our own balance sheet money, which went into incubating new businesses which had nothing to do with our existing business. A clear example was a few years back, we decided to enter into the renewable sector because we realized it's a sunrise sector in India, and we realized we have a strong right to win. So that business was started off. Today we have 1.5 gigawatts of assets under operation. We've got Ontario Teachers Pension Plan, which is the second largest pension plan in Canada, to actually take a 40% stake and committed $450 million. So from around 5 to 7 years back, just Anand thought about renewables as a sunrise sector. I have a strong right to win. Why shouldn't I, experiment? Maybe I will not be successful from where we are today amongst the largest renewable players in the country. So you won't become a conglomerate unless you innovate, right? Because you always start with one business and then you keep adding more businesses.
Incredible. Incredible. Thank you so much for sharing that, Assistant. You can give a round of applause for Puneet Ranjan for putting that out. One of my favorite people to speak to on panels, we have Raju Narisetti representing the leadership of McKinsey Group, heading the publishing part of the business. And we've spoken on the previous panel, we spoke a lot about new media, what the group has been doing on that role of podcasts in propagating information in modern day media. But today I want to hear about examples, tangible examples. Let's take a break from this panel. We're moving to storytelling sessions with Raju Narisetti. I might lower my voice a little bit and pretend to be like a true crime podcast host, if you would like, or else we can just listen to you and I can stop yapping. Please.
Thank you very much. I work for McKinsey. I lead all of McKinsey's publishing. And my relationship to India, other than having grown up there in Hyderabad, is that I'm a founder of a newspaper called Mint. Some of you who are in India probably know about it.
And the second largest business newspaper in India.
And there is actually a good Puneet connection to that because I started Mint for the Hindustan Times Group, HT Media, and Puneet took them public in 2005, right? So
alliances and partnerships even on the panel. I love it.
Small world. I want to start with an example actually of Anand Mahindra and Mahindra actually, as Puneet was talking. When we all think of Mahindra as a very quintessential Indian company, when they say that we are the largest tractor manufacturer, you'd say, yeah, of course, India is a large consumer. But if you go to Iowa and Nebraska, if you go to like South Dakota, you see Mahindra tractors all over now. So really, I mean, Anand is like, I think, a true global Indian in that sense. Started off in solving India's problems and now solving a lot of global problems. So that's a really compelling example. We don't necessarily think of Indian leaders as global Indians because they're doing so much in India. Right. But here's a great example of that. I'll give two examples. One, perhaps, I think many of you might know, and other, I doubt you would. The example I want to start off with, McKinsey, so I'll use a business example, Freshworks. Many of you know, it started in 2010. It's a software company and then moved to being a SaaS company. And its claim to fame is in 2021, the first Indian SaaS software company to be listed on the NASDAQ, right? That's a pretty big deal. It wasn't like one of these traditional large companies. It was, Freshworks. And look, most Indian companies are great for engineering and tech, right? That's a given in some ways. But what I think sets Freshworks apart and why I think of it as an example of a truly global Indian is its CEO, Girish Mathrubootham. He talks about this notion of leading with heart. And an illustration of that is when they had an IPO in 2021, 2/3 of the employees were shareholders. Very unusual, again, for an Indian company. I think they've turned about 500 of them into what's called crorepati's, right? He lives in that philosophy. But the other thing they do very differently from a lot of traditional Indian companies is they put a lot of energy into design and product management. Right? Again, so thinking about if you're going to be in San Mateo, you're going to be a public NASDAQ company, roots in India, you've got to think very global. And I think they bring that very much to the table. To the extent that a lot of companies are doing that now, but they're one of the first ones to say, we brought it up to a certain level, but we need now a different kind of expertise. So they hired David Woodside as president about a year and a half ago. David came to them from Impossible Foods, which is the artificial fake foods. Right. President of a SaaS software company. He had a background in Dropbox. Yeah. So I think that's the kind of risk-taking that you see in Indian companies and global Indians and who are really succeeding. So that's a little bit of a known example. The other one I want to give is, as most of you know, media is in a lot of trouble worldwide, particularly in the West, right? Newspapers are not doing well, they're struggling, sustainability. And the example I want to give is of somebody named Mitra Kalita. Her name is Sangamitra Kalita. She's from Assam, but she grew up in New Jersey. She's the co-founder of a company called URL Media. It's a network of 27 digital websites that really cater to Asian, Black, Latino audiences all over the US. Right? So what she's doing is like solving for a big existential issue in media, but doing it in a way that is building. A lot of Indians focus on South Asians, right, in the US, but she kind of stepped back and said, some of the challenges we have are like at the industry level, but if we can do something for brown and Black and other like communities and create, and she brought in like 27 different organizations, and you should check it out. It's just urlmedia.com. And the amazing thing is it's a for-profit company. It's been there for just about 3 years, already profitable and growing. Again, we all know about Fareed Zakaria. We all know the big Indians on media, but here is somebody very quietly solving for a problem that worldwide media is facing. So those are the examples when it comes to mind when I think about global Indians, and I'm sure there's like a lot more out there as well.
Of course, all of us here, I think, are global Indians to say the least. And with the way that we've seen it happening, I think I'm personally a little bit jealous of like your kids, and I don't know if you have grandkids, because to have a storyteller like that every evening coming back and getting a treasure trove of stories and examples of what's happening in the world out there, I think that would have been the best school to go to.
You might be jealous, but I have two post-teenage daughters who barely listen to me.
So Raju also, the very interesting thing about his LinkedIn profile, one of the first things you see on it is all views are my own, they're my personal views, and they have nothing to do with the organization I represent nonetheless. I would love to come back to you and hear about how easy or difficult might it be to create a personal brand within the scope of a larger corporate, but let's keep it for the next part of the session. We come to Tapan after this. So Tapan Singhal, he's the MD and CEO of the Bajaj Allianz General Insurance Company Limited. And I just learned that we actually grew up in the same city. I come from Calcutta, India, which used to be the erstwhile capital of our country. And I'm absolutely madly passionate about my city. And I work towards bringing young energies back to the city through this movement I started called Make Calcutta Relevant Again. Well, anyway, that's for a different time, perhaps. But you grew up in Calcutta, and you went to Le Martiner, from what I heard, and you run one of the largest insurance companies in India. What has it been like growing up in the city? And this might not be as interesting to people in the audience. They might not have an idea of what Calcutta might be like, but I truly think that the reason whoever I am a little bit today is only because of the fact that I grew up in Calcutta. And I would love to know your inputs on that, but of course, a little bit about your work and who is Tapan Singhal.
Thank you, Roy. I think one journalist once asked me, tell me something about your personality and where does it come from? I said, we don't realize the cities we grow up play a very big role in how you become. We never thought like that. I was lucky to be associated with two cities in India, very fascinating, Calcutta and Banaras. Yeah, so I think you can't be luckier to have these two cities.
Couldn't be more different.
Yeah, no, not different, but they are amazing cities. So I'm a Banarsi, no?
Yeah.
But by birth, I'm a Calcutta.
Yeah.
So I grew up in Calcutta, and the era I grew up in was fascinating. So I just tell you what Calcutta gave to me when I look back. One was respect for women. I do not know how many of you, and I don't know what Calcutta now, in those times when I used to get in a bus, if a lady would come, 100%, somebody would get up to get
Get
her
up.
seat. 100%.
100%.
I don't remember a single incident in a bus. My lady gets in that somebody did not get up to get the seat. I don't remember a single incident. Yeah.
Wow.
Second is, if the lady says, I will get down, the bus would stop in the middle of the road. It would just stop. Like, it's amazing. I never saw it in any other place. No?
In fact, third year in a row, safest city in India was Calcutta.
So the respect for women, I learned very on by observing. That is one thing that the city gave me. Second was the community feeling. Those days you didn't have mobile. So I'd get on a school bus, and if there's an examination, everybody in the society knew that there's examination. So the first aunt would be actually waiting for me to ask, Ki holo? Matlab, kya hua? What happened? And if I tell her the number or score, I guarantee you, by the time I reached home,
Everybody would know.
everybody knew it. Yeah? My mother would know it, and she would say, I told you. you fella, well, I told you. And my family was vegetarian, and all my aunts, Pishima, Bodhis, as you call them,
Yes.
they were so worried that this boy did not eat fish.
How
What
could
will
you-
happen?
what
They
will
were
happen?
so worried for me.
How many passes exams?
Yeah, how do you pass exam? Like, this is sheer disaster. My mom had to give up, and I actually can still eat fish, but I can't take the bones out because they would take that to feed me fish to ensure that I grew up well. No?
Yeah.
The love and care
Mm.
and that feeling that I had. And third is, you can't make a statement without a discussion. It just can't happen.
Right.
You just can't make any statement get away. There has to be a discussion. Everybody has to have a point of view.
Yeah.
No? So the beauty of communication, discussion, point of view, the love, the community, the being together, and I think all that had a deep imprint in what I became in my life as I moved forward. And that is due to Calcutta. And people forget, till 1911, the capital of India was capital. No, it was Calcutta.
Yeah.
It was not New Delhi. New Delhi came later, yeah? And if you look at the early time, 50s, 60s, 70s, all the movies, all the stars, the producers, the big conglomerate, the industrial houses,
Everything was.
everything was Calcutta. People forget that. I think it
Yes.
was an amazing city to be in, to grow up in. So it had a big impact on me.
Thank
And
you.
that is Calcutta, no? If you
Thank you for
uh,
sharing
sec-
that.
the second part of the company, as I said, I'm a physicist, and a lot of people talk of diversity, but I don't think we talk enough of diversity of the education stream that you have been in terms of the talent pool that you put together. No? So let's say most people end up recruiting only MBAs. What a disaster it can be if you only have MBAs, as your leadership at all levels. It's one stream of thought process that you're going to get into. No, a scientist by education, an agriculturist, an environmentalist, a doctor, and as an insurer, you would be surprised to know, because see, we write all risks. We write everything, right, from nuclear plants to crops to ducks to satellites to. We have to have talent which is spread all across. So I think when I sit with my team, I'd have a neurosurgeon, I'd have a nuclear scientist, I'd have an MBA, I'd have an engineer, I'd have everybody on board. And the beauty of conversations and the beauty of building organizations, which would be there, was the second thing which I learned in trying to build this company. So I've been the founding employee, built this company today with 140 million customers. And we provide about like direct employment about about 10,000 people in terms of on rolls, but in terms of variable, we have 100,000 people. One of the last employment generators, building all across. But more than that, I think the beauty why I stayed on being an insurer is the ability to solve societal issues, which is your business. I don't think anywhere else can you see that. Let me give you some examples.
Yes, please.
Like if I look at India today, and we don't talk much about it, we talk of the aging population across the world as an issue. India, when we were growing up, it was mostly joint families. Today, look at kids all across the globe, and they're doing very good, and we are proud of them. But fundamentally, parents who are aging are now staying alone in cities. And the biggest fear the kids would be having is, if something goes wrong, how do we, connect? How do we take care of it? Now you look at all this tech that you have, the fault detection and the call centers, and So we said, let's try and solve issues for society as insurers. And let's pick up each issue. And we are solving at least 40, 50 issues. So Apple that time had that fall detection, watch. And then one of my very close friends, I spoke to him, he's an entrepreneur. I said, why can't you get me this fall detection device at a low cost? And he was able to get that. We built it in the product. And we said that for anybody whose parents are alone, let them have this. It's an SOS button. If there's something which goes wrong, we pick it up, we call them up. If we don't get an answer, we send an ambulance, get them picked up, get them to the best hospital. We have a network of 10,000 hospitals. Get them treated by the best doctor because we are providing huge amount of business to the hospital in terms of all our customers and get them the green treatment. And by the time even the kid is aware about it and it's trying to come, we actually have, and the first golden hour makes a huge difference. Now, when I started looking at the business of insurance, I realized that it's a very powerful business of solving societal issues. We talk of India's growth story. We say that India is growing at 7%. It's phenomenal. But we actually don't realize India is growing at about 11%. 7 is after the leakages. Did you think about it? Like, we never think. I think we all talk about 7 and we're excited. Let me tell you the leakages. You have this catastrophic loss. This year in India, we had 8 cat events. Right from Sikkim flood, Chennai, you heard that. 8 in a year. It's phenomenal. Now, when a loss happens, there's a Sikkim floods. If you lose 100 rupees, 8 rupees would come from insurance, 5, 6 from government. But 85, 86 rupees is lost of the SME, MSME, the poor person. And that brings it down. That's 2% GDP gets affected. Yeah, 2%. Let's say loss happens in the US, a hurricane comes. It's 95% penetration, which means that the money starts flowing in. And the money does not come from the same country. Insurance money is all across the web. It's all across the world. So let's say when something goes wrong in India for floods and I'm paying for it, money would coming from some part of India, some part of Europe, some part of US. It's a conglomerate which comes together, and brings that. And then when money comes in, you have rebuilding happening, employment generation happening. So in US, actually the economy moves up after a cat event. In India, the economy goes for a toss. 10 crore people go below poverty line in India because they can't afford health. And to bring 10 crore people, that's how much? 110 million, yeah? To bring 110 million people above poverty line, it costs you 1.5% GDP. Yeah? Now you look at, we have worked on it, and the all election manifesto has health for all now. It's coming up. We're pretty happy. 5, 6 years took me to get there. But the point for trying to make is you add this all up, India is actually growing at about 10 to 11%. We don't realize that. While we are talking of economic growth, we're talking infrastructure, we're pumping, we should do that. But do we stop the leaking bucket? As an insurance industry, we play a big role in terms of how does it go. 40% infrastructure money spent is insurance money. 8% of equity funds in India is insurance money. It is that kind of contribution which happens. So that's how, being a scientist, I'm a passionate insurer. I've been in this, built this company, and it's been a fascinating journey.
Wow, what a journey, what a story. And the way that he talks about numbers, I've rarely heard people talk that passionately about numbers. It was like lines of poetry. Is that something that Calcutta did to you as well? They build a love for poetry through numbers.
It used to be like, Durga Puja means that you have to perform.
Yes.
Yeah? Every kid in every house had to perform on Durga Puja. I don't know how many of you are from Calcutta. So if you could sing, you could dance, if you could do nothing, you'd become a tree.
Yeah.
But you had to be there. You had to perform.
A singing tree, perhaps even.
At times you have to shake. You try to stand straight. I've been blessed to have grown up Calcutta. I've been blessed to be from Banaras, where I did my graduation, because that's a spiritual city.
Mm-hmm.
So spiritualism, the obsession about society, community, respect for women. So much I go on and on. It's been amazing blessing.
Thank you. Thank you so much for sharing those with us. For all those who did not know, by the way, Durga Puja is actually the world's largest public arts festival. It happens a decentralized, accessible festival, open to all. It happens parallelly at 40,000 venues on the same week every year. And it's $10 billion spent. The contribution of the Durga Puja to the economy of West Bengal, our state, every year is $10 billion. To put that into perspective, the Olympic Games has this year's Paris Olympic Games has a budget of $8.5 billion, and that happens once every 4 years. So just that's the scale of the event. Some people say that it's India's best kept secret. If you've never come to India, at this point, they should just make me the tourism minister or something of West Bengal, because I can't stop talking about the state.
And every kid performs.
And every kid performs. We build in a love for the culture and creative industries to that as well. Thank you so much for sharing that and a little bit of trivia for all of you. We come last but not the least, Mr. Shuchin Bajaj. The gentleman here runs Ujala Cygnus hospitals, and you have 21 hospitals around the country. I would love to, because we were already talking about the medical space, the healthcare space, and everywhere I've been going around the strip this time, and on the promenade, people talk about longevity. It's somehow become a very important part of the discussion, of the discourse. However, most of the time I'm like, this just sounds like my grandmother, everything that she would say to me, like eat better, sleep on time, don't be late, drink water. That's exactly what it sounds like to me. So I do not know what longevity in the scope of the World Economic Forum in Davos means for most people. Maybe I'm missing something, but I would love to hear about it from the perspective of somebody who runs a bunch of hospitals, takes care of people's lives, on two aspects. One would be, what did COVID teach you as the biggest disaster to happen, in our times at least, as somebody who was on the other side giving care? Are there things that it taught you that changed the way you do business or the way that you look at the healthcare space itself as well? And your thoughts about indigenous healthcare in India. How do you think, or what scope do you think it has in a global sphere? We might not have been able to capitalize on yoga, but we might be able to do something else in the future that maybe comes from a discussion that one of us have here at World Economic Forum, because I guess that's why we come to Davos, right? So over to you, Mr. Shuchin Bajaj. You can grab this mic with you.
Thank you very much. So,
Sorry, Dr. Shuchin Bajaj. I'm so sorry.
no, that's fine. I'm a college dropout, so you can call me. Although I did drop out after qualifying, and that's why I think I became an entrepreneur. That's why all the investors write checks for me. I think that's the basic qualification. College dropout, yes, there's your check. So, yeah, I mean, at the risk of being put on ridicule again, I mean, I would say I am an accidental entrepreneur. As I said, I was pursuing my super specialization in gastroenterology when I dropped out to start this madness of opening large hospitals in small towns of India. Although nothing in India is small. We talk of small towns, and then there are districts with 2 million to 7 million to sometimes 10 million population.
A small European country.
Yeah. So we are in Jaunpur in a town. It has 7 million in the district and no super specialty healthcare. So as you said, we run 21 hospitals, and it is quite a tough business to run these kinds of hospitals in small towns where urbanization is not enough. And it's difficult to attract good quality talent to work there. So technology and globalization is something that's inherent to our business from the very first day. In COVID especially, it worked out really well, because in COVID we were struggling for something that we never thought would be a problem. Never in our medical training, never in our life did we ever run out of oxygen till that day. And lack of physicians. We had so many doctors down with COVID, so many of them passing away. So lack of doctors on the ground. And all the 21 hospitals were, of course, working full time. But we also opened a 1,000 bed, completely free of cost hospital on the outskirts of Delhi, because there were no beds available. And it was the largest field ICU in the country with 308 ventilator ICU beds. But to achieve that, we had to reach out to many people. So the biggest helper in this case was an organization called BAPIO. It is the British Association of Physicians of Indian Origin. And we reached out to them, and they would do all the ICU rounds online with our doctors here, so that we could implement the best practices. And digitalization was, of course, something that was an inherent part of it. Also, we started a not-for-profit at that time called Project Step One. So I don't know how many of you were in India at that time, but if you developed COVID, you would get a call from a doctor saying, we are speaking from this government, we are from government of Delhi, we are from government of Karnataka. That was all Project Step One. None of those doctors were working for the government. They were volunteering on these platforms. We had more than 12,000 doctors volunteering on a digital platform, having never met each other. The project still doesn't have a physical office. It's all digital. And we did 98 million teleconsultations, right from home isolation to quarantines to plasma banks at that time. We managed the entire plasma bank operations of Delhi, Bombay, and Faridabad plasma banks. And then vaccination, of course. We did a lot of vaccine ushering and monitoring and all that. And now we put that platform to use to do the eradicate TB, the TB Mukt Bharat program, where we are monitoring and following up TB patients so that we make sure that do not drop out of treatment. So all this was taught like in a week, I think. The first, we had no, I mean, when we started this Project 7, it was a small WhatsApp group called the Founders versus COVID. And I was the only doctor on that platform. So everyone else was a techie. And they said something big is coming and governments will not be able to manage this. We have to do something. So they started all this technological integration on how doctors could just come in at their comfort, do 2, 3, 5 teleconsults and go away. And they would get consults only when they were available. And we used a platform from Freshworks, the story, and they gave it to us completely free of cost at that time. So a lot of that was taught on the move. So when we started this, telemedicine was actually illegal in India. It was. There was no telemedicine policy. You could not prescribe anything. And it came in later when we advocated. And we told the government that we've already started this. So, yeah, might as well. So, and the right to health has been one other advocacy that we pursued very, very rigorously post-COVID, because COVID showed us that, you know, if you don't have the right to health, any other right, it does not really matter. And as Sir also said, almost 100 million people slip below the poverty line every year due to healthcare shocks. That is something that how can we aim to be a 5 trillion economy when if we are, you know, allowing all this to happen every year? Getting them back up costs a lot of money. There was a UN study which I was recently reading that said, if you could only improve the healthcare of the women of India, you would add $1 trillion to the economy immediately. So these things, I think healthcare needs to be recognized. And I really want to use this stage to thank the Show Up Foundation for recognizing us and inviting us here. We just got the Global Social Entrepreneur of the Year award, just came from there.
The only Indian citizen to win the award for this year. So congratulations on behalf.
Thank you very much. So I want to thank Show Up Foundation and WEF for having us here and making us share our experiences and telling you the stories that we have.
Excellent. Now we have about 10-15 minutes if the audience allows us, and we can maybe do one story each. The global Indian, maybe the global Indian that you've worked with, the one that you wish had more spotlight, one that you would like to share the story of. This is the time, speak now or forever be quiet, or whatever they say at weddings. But we go back again to you, to Pawan Sukhdev, and we continue with stories, and we'll count that as your closing remarks for this session on the Global Indian.
So the Global Indian I select is Mirabi. The context, Andhra Pradesh, a state in India with 55 million people, of which there are 6 million farmers, of which 850,000 are transitioning or have already transitioned to natural farming. Why? Because they believe that actually agriculture is about biology, not chemistry. And the experiment that started was done by a visionary Indian civil servant called Vijay Thallam, who was at some point the principal secretary of Andhra Pradesh, couldn't convince his own agriculture department to give natural farming a chance. Went back to the women in the self-help groups that he had created when he set up microfinance in Andhra Pradesh and said, sisters, will you help me change how we grow food? Because everyone was suffering with low yields and illnesses and kidney disease and so on and so forth. And he brought in experts from Maharashtra and others, and he showed them how things are possibly different. Today, it's become a movement. Women farmers actually volunteer to change the practice, and Mirabi is one of them. She volunteered in 2008 because her husband had been diagnosed with cancer as a result, we believe, of pesticides and fertilizers. So she had to take over the task of earning for the family. A couple of years down the line, she had an accidental fall and broke her leg, and she's still maimed. And she grows basically rice and various other plants and some vegetables in her patch, not in the field, but in her home patch, and converts them into pickles. and sells them. And her skill in figuring out, so natural farming works on the logic that you keep the soil activated, which means you use what they call Jivamritam, which is a mix of 10 kilograms of gobar, I should say it in English, basically cow dung and cow urine, and they mix that with food for the bacteria, which is basically brown sugar, molasses and gram flour, and top it up with 200 liters of water and stir it around. It smells to high heavens. When it smells really bad, then you know you can use it. It's ready. And that's bacteria. It's a bacterial soup that they just sprinkle on the ground. Everything comes up. So yeah, you got to get rid of the weeds, but the plant productivity increases, whether it's rice or groundnuts or papaya or pomegranate or whatever it is that they're growing, or maize. Average yields, my company did a study actually, that's why I know the average yields across all of these three ecoregions in Andhra Pradesh went up on average 11%. The lowest was 8%, the highest was like 80%, because things like chili actually grows higher yield, is just amazing. So cash crops do really well. Mirabi figured out that, we rotate the crops, but there's a period of 2 months where basically you have to just leave the fields because you finished your winter crop and you haven't yet planted your summer crop. And she thought, hang on, since we are activating the soil, what if I just plant random crops between March and May? Worst case, they'll activate the soil because we put this in earlier so that the next crop will be better. Best case, I might even get some value. So she tried, she has plots. I went to her farm. She has plots, and she said, obviously, I can't speak the local language, I speak Hindi, but there was a translator. She was telling me that this is 2019, that one is 2020. So she's trying 18 crops here, 28 crops here, 31s in that one there from last year and so on. And she's seeing which mix works better. A scientist doing experiments in agriculture, and she figured out which works best. What does she get out of it? Various plants, which are only 2 months old, but serve as fodder for her cattle. So she's getting value out of that. And this was acknowledged, and she had actually devised the best possible way of using that period, that idle period of 2 months. Mirabi was acknowledged at the Oxford University, my alma mater, and that's why I bring her up. But I think at some point, someone like her has to come here, a global Indian, truly, because she's teaching us how to grow food in a way that is higher yield, lower cost because there's no medical costs involved, and actually better for feeding us in a healthy way for the future.
That isn't an example for longevity. I don't know what it is. That is an example of great frugal innovation, use of science on the ground, and then working towards doing something that we all need, which is food. And we come to you after that. Your example could be one of your portfolio companies, could be a startup founder that you've worked with, or maybe even not worked with, wish you had worked with, or somebody representing an ecosystem, maybe in India, maybe wherever it is, but of Indian descent, who you think is truly a global Indian.
So for me, the immediate person that comes to mind is my close friend Lakshmi Praturi. She actually was was an engineer at Intel, and then she used to run Intel Capital for some time before she left, and then she worked for America India Foundation and so on. But at some point, she became very involved with TED, technology, entertainment, design, the TED conference, TED Talks. So she got involved with that, and she decided that she was going to take TED to India. So she actually ended up speaking to the founders of TED, Chris Anderson, and those people, and managed to actually get them to set up the first TED India in Mysore in 2009, and to get the Indian population to learn to pay for ideas. It was like pulling teeth, because Indians were like, why would we pay you $1,000 just to attend a bunch of talks? So that was the mindset when she began. But she strived, she persisted, and she managed to actually kick it off. And it's now a thriving, conference that happens every year, and it's a set of activities during the year. But it really is about celebrating disruptive ideas and paying for being in that milieu of people that is going to talk to you about those disruptive ideas. So I think she has taken a very important, kind of a event that happens in the US, to India and done it beautifully, and made it very Indian actually, against all odds. So.
Yeah, and our co-chair of the PhD Chamber of Commerce, in fact, and my co-curator for these New Age India sessions, Yash Raj, has been an instrumental part of the TEDx Gateway scheme of things, which is in fact the largest TED conference that happens outside of the US. Currently, I think last year there were 6,000 people in attendance. Who would have known that Indians would actually pay for something that they think is free kagyan, right?
So yeah, I would say close second to Lakshmi is Yash Raj.
Yes.
So he's expanded it to to a level that none of us thought was possible. So congrats, Yash Raj.
Congrats, Yash. Yeah. Can we have Yash in front here? He was actually supposed to be hosting this session, but he fell a little bit sick. We call the Davos flu. You must have been hearing about it around. It catches you like a freight train in your face. But hopefully he'll be feeling better, and tomorrow morning session he can host. So I can slyly. Huh? It's just a cold, not a flu. He went to the hospital yesterday. I didn't even. Hopefully he's going to be feeling better. We move on again. So to Puneet, your idea of a global Indian.
I'm not saying Anand's name because it's politically the right thing to say. I
No,
know.
please say it.
But I'll give you two examples of that, which not too many. I'll be surprised if most people don't know about it. I won't be surprised. So I think two examples, because it's not about all the great businesses he's built, etc. It's not about that. I'm talking about global Indian, right? We all know about Formula One, right? How many people know about Formula E? Not many, because not too many people are watching electric car racing today. We're the only Indian company which has a Formula E team. And the reason I call him a global Indian is to have that vision that at some point in time, sustainability will also come into racing. And yesterday, me and my wife were at a dinner, and this gentleman walked up who's, I think, the CEO of McLaren. And he said, oh, you're from Mahindra Group. You guys invested in a Formula E team. We are also investing now. So Anand invested in something long time back, which McLaren is doing now. So that is, if that is not an example of a global Indian, I don't know what it is.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for sharing. Raju, your thoughts? You did share a couple of examples before, but maybe one.
Yeah, so I'll pick a celebrity and give it some context. So streaming has taken over music, right? And all of us stream all the time. Spotify is pretty big. So the way streaming industry measures how things are going is they look at the top 10,000 streams. The top 5 languages of the top 10,000 streams in the world are English, Korean, Japanese, Spanish, and Hindi. Right? The most interesting thing is last year, the only language that grew was Hindi. It went from 3.8% of streaming to 7.8%. And you know why? There's this guy called Arjit Singh. For the last 3 years, he's been the top streaming sensation in India. But a lot of people don't know he's number 12 in the world. And in last year, he had more streams than Beyonce. So I give you Arjit Singh.
If you can ever go to one of his concerts, if you already haven't, if you're Indian in this room, you've probably definitely been to an Arjit Singh concert.
Global Indian, the young girls 7 and 12, and they're speaking about AI as part of the Finnish delegation. These are the global Indians. The most affected I have been by some global Indians are two in particular. The first one was a person named Raju Garg. So I don't know if many would know him. He founded the first company, very famous, called Pine Labs, which is now point of sale systems a lot. Then he exited and founded a company called Indus Logic, then became Global Logic, stayed in the US for a long time and came back to India after his exit, and he was the first investor I had. So he was the first one who really believed that a hospital would work in small towns, because everybody would be like, people have to come to Delhi to get this treated. And I said, no, I mean, why should they? Why should they be traveling in a jeep for 6 hours with a heart attack patient? And then, if they do come to Delhi, they would have to sell their houses and their fields and their lands. And then 15 days later, that patient dies, and then the widow is begging on the streets all the time. So sometimes they have to feel that, oh, they feel that they should have died on the way. So he was the first guy who believed in me. He was the first guy who put his investment. And now he's a very successful investment banker, runs his own fund, invests all over the world on a sector agnostic technology companies. He's got his fund 2 going now. So I was very, very inspired by him, his zeal and his vision and his ability to back a very risky business and to work with the founder then to make sure that we were doing the right things. And second is somebody who's actually attending this event. So she's a very dear friend. Again, I met her on a fellowship that I was doing, and she was the owner of the family that ran the largest family tea business in India. She managed that business, and suddenly, I don't know why, gave it up to go and build roads in Nepal. The sustainability bug hit her badly. Then she went in Africa and worked with the farmers in Africa. And now she's heading the MasterCard Inclusivity Center there. She's also attending the conference. Her name is Suhashini Chandran. She's traveled all over the globe to work on issues that are close to her heart, and she's not been afraid to give up things that sometimes people like us are very afraid to give up on. So these two people are the ones that inspired me.
Amazing stories. I think, again, lots of food for thought. What exactly does it mean to be a global Indian? I don't know if we have successfully answered the question, but we definitely know that we're on the right path. We have leaders like all of you to show us the way forward, but also the fact that all of you were not hesitant to pull others up. I think that goes on to show at least some of the characteristics that global Indians definitely have, is that the road is not to be treaded alone, the road is to be treaded with others around us, pulling them forward. It's been an absolute pleasure hosting all of you for the last New Age India session of the day. Thank you everyone for being with us. I know it's almost 6:30 p.m. and you have multiple party invites probably awaiting you. Have a lovely, lovely evening, no matter what you're doing. Stay warm, stay safe, and it's been a pleasure. This is me with Thank you.